Shalom and greetings from Jerusalem, Jane. I want to give you the latest update here out of Israel because this whole nation is in shock. I woke up to shocking breaking news. But then again, when you're dealing with a genocidal Nazi terror regime like Hamas, nothing really should surprise or shock you anymore. But after watching the horror show in Gaza yesterday, the Nazi propaganda from Hamas, when they were going to hand over coffins with the remains, with the bodies of what we thought were 4 precious hostages who was brutally kidnapped in the October 7 onslaught and held in dungeons inside Gaza. Instead of trying to show just a little bit of dignity, well, it is too much to ask for when you're dealing with modern day Nazis. They, as usual, had a big stage with big banners mocking Netanyahu as a vampire, blaming him for the murder of those 4 precious hostages. 4 black coffins were standing on stage under these deplorable banners to the cheer of hundreds of so-called civilians who is nothing but Nazi supporters inside the Gaza Strip. Family fathers in Gaza, pulling their kids out to this horror show to the cheer of dead Jewish babies. Hamas putting on shows with guns and weapons, having all the children come and meet their role models who are the Hamas Nazi terrorists, meeting them, taking selfies, clapping at them, because that's who they are in Gaza. And that's who we have known living here in Israel for years, who they really are. But the rest of the world are putting their heads in the sand, believing the lie of the innocent civilians in Gaza. So hundreds of them were pouring in to this horror show of Hamas, complete lack of any sense of anything. Putting those 4 coffins on stage, printed out faces of the Bibas family and of Ode Lipswich, the 4th hostage, deceased hostage that was going to be released yesterday, putting their faces in coffins. And then they wrote, they were arrested on October 7. Evil satanic monsters. They brutally entered their houses and they kidnapped them and they dragged them into Gaza. But no, they had to put down. They were arrested. They also mislabeled the coffins of of Ariel and Kfir Bibas. And in another sign of mockery, of disrespect, they carried the coffins all the way down to the ground. And then it turned out when the coffins were opened, they had put down their evil Hamas Nazi propaganda items in the coffins. And then they handed the coffins over to the Red Cross with locks. They were locked. And they gave keys, according to report, to the Red Cross that didn't open the coffins. That's the Nazis that we are dealing with. And not one person in Gaza did anything towards this to try and help any hostages. On the contrary, on October 7, when this happened, they were out cheering in the streets. They were attacking and cursing and spitting and at the hostages when they were dragged into Gaza. They took part in the looting inside Israel. So there are no innocent civilians in Gaza. We saw that yesterday, even down to the youngest baby who was brought in to this freak horror show. And that's the next generation of Hamas, ISIS, Nazi terrorists. So the bodies were transferred from the Red Cross to the IDF. There was a short ceremony with a rabbi reading the Psalms over them. They were draped in Israeli flags and they were brought into Israel. Before that, they were gone through x-rays because, again, you're dealing with Nazis. Who knew what they had put in those coffins? So the coffins were being brought in a cortege, in a caravan of vehicles, into the Forensic Institute in Israel in a day where we couldn't breathe because it was too much pain to even breathe. and people were standing with flags throughout the route of this entourage as they arrived to the Forensic Institute. First, they did the DNA test and the examinations, and it was confirmed that the body of Ode Lipswitz, his family was notified, this is the remains of your father, of your grandfather, may he rest in peace. And then I went to sleep, and I woke up early this morning to the horrifying news from the Forensic Institute here in Israel. First, that the Bibas family was informed that it was indeed the remains of Kfir, 9 months old when he was kidnapped in the arms of his mother into Gaza, and 3-year-old Ariel when he was kidnapped by these terrorists into Gaza. So it was the remains of the Bibas babies. And they said that they were brutally murdered in captivity in Gaza in November, 1 month after they were brutally kidnapped into Gaza, were they murdered, November 2023. But then to our horror, the Forensic Institute confirmed it was not the remains of Shiri Bibas. It was not the remains of the mother of the 2 babies that was brought into Israel. It was an unidentified woman from Gaza that Hamas deliberately put in a coffin with the face of Shiri Bibas, telling us this was the Biba mother, and they knew it wasn't, and she was brought into Israel. So this is the Nazis that we are dealing with. So on October 7, Biba's mother, Shiri, Aden, father, and the 2 babies, Kfir and Ariel, was kidnapped into Gaza after Shiri's mother were murdered in their home. And now Aden was released alive. The bodies, the remains of Kfir and Ariel came into Israel yesterday. But where is Shiri? Where is the mother? Hamas only now, 5 minutes ago, came out and said that her remains was mixed up with the remains of others after an Israeli airstrike in Gaza, which we know is a complete lie. So this is who we are dealing with in Gaza. The Nazis. When the portal from hell opened on October 7, and more than 3,000 terrorists armed to the teeth came into Israel, and they committed all of these atrocities, committed a small genocide, war crimes against Jewish people, the worst we have seen since the Holocaust. And some of the terrorists that participated in that onslaught was featured yesterday at the ceremony, saying, I was in Israel, I took part on the onslaught. Absolutely horrifying. So this is where we are at. Tomorrow, tomorrow, the 6 remaining alive hostages in the first deal are set to be released. Israel wants to fulfill that promise. Israel wants those hostages out. At this time, I don't even know how many hundreds of terrorists has to be released in order for those 6 to come home, God willingly, alive tomorrow. Let me end by saying something that might sound a little harsh, but for all of you people in Denmark, in Austria, in Spain, in America, in Brazil, in Argentina, in New Zealand, wherever around the world who took part in any pro-Palestinian rally since October 7. You morons, you useful idiots and imbeciles. How deplorable can you be standing up for these Nazis, monsters in Hamas, who committed these atrocities, who murdered a 9-month-old baby and a 3-year-old toddler. And you went out in the streets around the world and you walked with pro-Palestinian signs, which is a death chance to the eradication of Kfir and Ariel Bibas that was murdered in November 2023. You empowered these Nazis in Gaza to continue and to do the freak show, the horror show, the subhuman behavior that we saw in mocking those 3, now it turns out to be 3 precious hostages, including a baby and a toddler. You imbeciles, if you don't know anything, educate yourself and don't believe the failing mainstream media who since October 7 has been propaganda tools for Hamas when they have shared anything that came out from Gaza about the death toll, about Israel hitting hospitals, killing this and this and this, about Israel raiding hospitals and arresting innocent when hospital staff was Nazi Hamas, when UNRWA workers were Nazi Hamas, when the death toll that came out from the health ministry in Gaza came from Hamas, which we know now was highly exaggerated, highly exaggerated, and the death toll that came out from Hamas that you shared without any filter, more than half of those were Hamas terrorists. Stop being useful idiots and imbeciles in the media and around the world walking in pro-Palestinian demonstrations when you are in fact supporting the murder of Jewish people, of Jewish babies. So now we'll see what happens tomorrow with the release of the remaining 6 alive hostages that's going to come out tomorrow. And including in those 6 are 2 Israeli civilians who has been held captive for more than 10 years by these modern day Nazis inside Gaza. 10 years. Did you even know that? Probably not. Probably not. That's the Nazi Hamas terrorists that we are dealing with. So yeah, I have to just speak the truth, because you need to know the truth and you need to educate yourself. You cannot trust anything that comes out from modern day Nazis in Gaza, and you certainly do not go out in the streets and you support them and you march for them and you walk behind people who wear or carry a banner that say from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, when that is indeed calling for the murder of Kfir and Ariel Bibas and every other single Jew living in their God-given homeland, the Jewish land, the land of the Bible. So for such a time as this, we stand with Israel. We send condolences to the Bibas family and to the family of dear old Ode, who came home in a coffin yesterday. Bye.